This weekend, the United States and Israel launched major air offensives against Iran. The Ayatollah is dead. How did we get here? What does it mean for us average Americans? And how are the insiders positioned? We're not a political channel. We're a financial one. As such, we will solely be discussing what this event really means for your wallet, for your 401k, the economy, and again, how you can position like an insider. You know, like those Congress critters, the same ones that routinely beat even the best managed hedge funds. Those guys. So you know the ones. Let's examine. The White House calls it a major combat operation, the most serious escalation in the Middle East in a generation. The president says it's about nuclear weapons, missile threats, and protecting American lives. And if true that Iran was developing nuclear weapons despite taking billions in U.S. funds to not do that, they have now reached the FO part of FAFO. It's arrived. Oh, and by the way, it's a good move for a very few certain U.S. companies. Insiders know this, and they have positioned accordingly months ago. And while politicians and generals talk about defense and the rest of us are about to feel the consequences in our wallets, potentially our jobs, potentially our retirement accounts, unless we position too, let's examine how we got here. So let's rewind. Iran has been an adversary of the United States since 1979. Nuclear negotiations came and went. Diplomacy largely failed. And last year, the U.S. and allied forces struck Iranian nuclear facilities. Containment wasn't enough. Intelligence showed Iran building missile and nuclear capabilities. And now those warnings have culminated in open conflict. So yes, this is the predictable result of decades of hostility, failed diplomacy, and rising military tensions. Inevitable even. And now let's talk about what this means for you and me, because the war is already affecting the economy. First, let's look at energy. Iran sits beside the Strait of Hormuz, through which nearly 20% of the world's oil flows. Even a brief disruption sends crude prices higher. Right now, as of the time of this recording, Brent crude is $72.48 a barrel. If Iran strikes shipping lanes, prices could surge much higher. And let's put this in usable perspective. A 15-gallon tank, a $5 per barrel spike. So that's roughly $10 to $15 more per fill-up. Business shipping goods, groceries, electronics face higher costs. Heating oil, gasoline, diesel, all rising higher together. And this feeds directly into inflation. Before we even talk about cost of war, let's look at financial markets. Stocks hate uncertainty. Equities already were volatile. Volatility is up. Investors flee risk, pouring into gold and U.S. treasuries. Gold is about $5,280 per ounce, very close to its $5,400 all-time high. The S&P dropped over 3% in 48 hours, and credit spreads are widening. Borrowing costs are rising for companies, and your retirement account, it depends how it's positioned. Even a moderate 5 to 10% drop will wipe out tens of thousands of dollars in a typical 401k. We'll look at who benefits next. The obvious ones are defense contractors such as Lockheed, Raytheon, and Northrop Grumman. Missiles, bombs, fighter jets, suddenly essential. Big oil. Exxon, already a value stock. Chevron, Aramco. Higher oil prices mean massive profits for these companies, but it comes at the direct expense of consumers. So let's look at financial institutions, hedge funds, and banks that profit from volatility. Who pays the price? Well, ordinary Iranians to be sure, but also downstream ordinary Americans too. Families filling gas tanks, workers paying higher prices, retirees watching investments teeter. And back in Iran, civilians already suffer. Infrastructure damaged, markets disrupted, food prices soaring. And let's look globally. This isn't just about the US. In Europe, inflation, supply chains, energy security. In China, dependent on Middle Eastern oil, forced to hedge or find alternatives. And Russia could deepen ties with Tehran, complicating diplomacy. Every missile, every strike, and every threat reshapes global economics. Macro risk crystallized. Markets react, not just in the Middle East, but globally and back home here in the US as well, your bank account and in your life. So let's break it down. If gasoline increases $5 to $10 per fill up, that's roughly $500 extra a year for a commuter driving 15,000 miles. Your 401k, if it experiences just a 5% drop in the S&P, that's typically about a $25,000 loss against a $500,000 retirement account. If gold spikes up, let's say to $5,500 an ounce, let's call that a $5,000 gain for somebody holding about 10 ounces. And airline tickets, assuming you typically travel, will increase about 10 to 15% as jet fuel costs climb. And so this is real money leaving or entering real households. And it's happening while politicians talk about patriotism and national security, but who benefits and who pays? Well, the beneficiaries clearly are defense contractors, oil companies, and select investors. And paying the price are those who are downstream, typically anybody globally, or even here in America, Middle Eastern civilians, or anyone else relying on stable markets and affordable energy worldwide. Wars are never free. The costs are hidden until they hit your wallet. So tonight, as headlines scream and pundits parse politics, remember, this isn't just about Iran. It's about power, influence, and unseen forces shaping billions of lives. Every missile, every spike in oil, every wobble in the stock market, it's about you and me. It's about positioning yourselves within the new paradigm. And here's a hint. Wars are expensive. Global money will be printed. Inflation already here will accelerate. Position accordingly. We'll talk about in our next video credit markets and what that means to you specifically and how also to position accordingly and the importance of cash in times like these. So thank you for watching all the way to the end. As always, take care of yourselves and each other and build that stack.